The Last Testimony. The Last Testimony. The wardstones hummed. Inquisitor Sarah Vile heard them through the floor, a vibration in her teeth that never quite went away. 20 years in interrogation rooms, and she still noticed it. Private Edric Moore sat across the table from her. His hands were shaking. The room smelled like stone dust and lamp oil, walls pale grey, scuffed with age. A single barred window showed nothing but dark sky. The kind of room designed to make men feel small. Vile had never needed the architecture to do that work for her. Moore's uniform hung loose, 3 days of stubble. His eyes were the colour of old water and they wouldn't focus. They flinched when she pulled back her chair. She poured him water. His hand trembled so badly it slopped across the table. She didn't comment. Some men held themselves together with courtesy. Moore would come apart if she gave him the option. "My squad," he said. His voice was raw. "Did they? Are they?" "You were recovered alone, 3 clicks east of the forward observation post." She said it flat, no softening. "You were conscious when the runners found you. You collapsed before they could learn more." The tears came quietly, no sound. Just his shoulders hunching, his eyes leaking. She let him have 5 minutes, not out of mercy. Men needed to break before they could be useful. When his breathing steadied, she slid a cloth across the table. "Tell me your name." Private Edric Moore, 3rd Company, 2nd Battalion, New Antioch Forward. "The patrol, start from the beginning." Moore's hands went flat on the table. He stared at them as though they belonged to someone else. Then he spoke. "We got the orders at dawn, 9 of us. Sergeant Bren, Wardkeeper Dash, Corporals Yon and Thress, soldiers Losh, Kelvin, Vinder, Cottis and me. The trench was cold. March in the lower Antioch positions meant mud that hadn't frozen and wouldn't thaw. The cold got into your hands first, then your feet, then the metal of your rifle. Within 10 minutes of standing still, the steel was the same temperature as the ground. Metal didn't hold warmth out here, nothing did. Dash carried his wardstones wrapped in cloth across his chest. You could see them through the weave, grey blocks the size of your fist, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. He was a thin man, older than most of us. A scar ran white and clean from his eye to his jaw. Good man, Dash. Kept his instruments clean. Always had a calm word when the new lads were rattled. We reached the Heretic sector at 9, 3 days of silence. No movement, no fire, no voices. Sector 7 had simply stopped. We moved in. The Heretic trench was wrong from the first step. The walls were shored with bone instead of timber. Human bone, or something close to it. And it was warm to the touch, not body warm, the warmth of something still working, still growing. In a trench where everything else was frozen, that warmth was wrong in a way I don't have words for. There were rifles in the firing positions, abandoned, bolts chambered, rations half-eaten. It smelled like copper and spoil. Dash pulled out his wardstones. He walked slowly, watching them pulse. "The instruments are registering an anomaly," he said. "Strong. Down sector about 100 meters." We went deeper. The walls got higher. The shadows got darker. There were pictures on the walls drawn in what I'm fairly sure was blood. Figures with too many limbs. Then we found the crater. Roughly circular, 8 meters across, 3 meters deep. The walls were smooth in a way Earth shouldn't be smooth. The ground around it was black, not burned, drained. Something had pulled the color out of it. At the bottom was something organic. It had weight. It had shape. It wasn't human. I couldn't hold the shape of it in my mind. Every time I tried, my thoughts slid away. Dash held his instruments over the lip. The wardstones pulsed red, then white, then a color I don't have a name for. "Don't touch it," he said quietly. "Don't go down there." Bren drove a marker stake into the ground. Carved in the coordinates, veil breach probable. Then we went further east. Beyond the crater, things started going wrong in small ways first. A sandbag that seemed to have moved. A section of duckboard facing the wrong direction. Then bigger. The symbols on the walls were new, freshly drawn. The path that had been straight was curved. Then Kelvin fell. The ground opened beneath him, and he was gone before any of us could reach him. His rifle clattered against stone as he fell, echoing downward for a very long time. We ran. The walls were cracking behind us, the ground falling away in sections. Losh made a sound, not a scream, just a gasp, a single moment of surprise. And then he wasn't there anymore. The space where he'd been was still moving, still running, still real in every way, except Losh wasn't in it. We kept running. We broke out of the Sector 7 trench as the light failed. Stumbled across the parapet like men pulled from water. The guards didn't recognize us. Our uniforms were covered in dust that wasn't mud. Bren collapsed at the perimeter post. He didn't fall, he just stopped, standing upright, eyes open. And then he was falling. We'd lost Losh, we'd lost Kelvin. 7 came back, out of 9. They separated the survivors, standard procedure, isolate accounts before cross-referencing. There were no contradictions, they had all seen the same things. Bren wouldn't speak about the collapse. He sat and stared at the map, with his finger on the coordinates of the junction. Dash was in the medical section, asking for his instruments back, saying that without them, he couldn't be certain what was real. It was on the 3rd day that Moore noticed Vinder was missing. He asked a guard. The guard didn't know what he was talking about, said the name wasn't in any record, said 7 soldiers had returned from Sector 7, not 8. 7. No Vinder. Moore knew they were wrong. He remembered the man, his thick shoulders, the way he and Cottis moved together through the trench, the ox-like steadiness of him under pressure. He'd been there when they ran. He was certain. But when Moore tried to hold the memory, it slid away. He could see the space Vinder had occupied. He could see the outline. But the face wouldn't come. The voice was gone. Like a photograph where one figure had been carefully removed and the background pasted over, almost perfectly, almost entirely. Thress died that night, found sitting on his bunk. No marks, no cause. Just stopped. Like a mechanism switched off. When they told Moore, he tried to remember what Thress looked like. He couldn't. Jon started screaming at night, not fear of something specific, terror of existing in a body that was missing pieces. They sedated him. On the 5th day, Vial arrived. She had all the accounts, the medical examinations, the cross-reference testimonies. She sat across from Moore in the grey room and she listened. "You came back with 6 soldiers and 1 wardkeeper," she told him, "but 9 left. And on exit, the records show 5 soldiers, 1 wardkeeper. Nobody named Losh, nobody named Vinder. They were with us." Were they? Or are they memories of men who no longer exist in this layer of reality, running through infinite variations of the same trench? Moore had no answer. What happened next, Vial reconstructed from subsequent testimony and the evidence from the forward position at Sector 5, where the survivors were reassigned. She recorded it. All of it. Dash fell first, not in combat. They were moving through a communication trench at dusk, standard rotation, when the wardkeeper stopped walking. Stood very still, head tilted, as though listening to something below the frequency of human hearing. "The instruments are registering," he said. His instruments were locked in a vault in the rear. He had nothing in his hands. Then the ground opened beneath him. A small collapse. A section of trench floor that gave way. He fell, and the earth closed over him like water. By the time they dug down, there was nothing. No body, no cavity, just packed earth and the smell of something sealed for a very long time. Jon walked into no man's land at 3 in the morning. Just walked. Past the sentries, past the wire, out into the dark. They found his rifle on the firing step, still warm. Then Bren. He woke Moore on the 7th night. His face was grey, not from exhaustion. The grey of a man who understood something he couldn't say. "Something followed us out of Sector 7, he said. "It's not killing us, it's taking us, one by one, back into the breach, back through whatever we walked through. What do we do?" He looked at his map for a long time. "We survive," he said. "That's what soldiers do." 2 nights later, Moore watched Bren put on his boots, button his jacket, the movements of a man following orders he couldn't refuse. "Stay here, Moore, don't follow me. That's an order." He walked out of the dugout, up the steps, into the trench. Moore heard boots on the duckboards, then silence. Cottis was the last. He'd been quiet for days, not his usual nervous quiet, but something deeper. Something that looked like acceptance. "I see it now," he said. "I see where we have to go." Moore grabbed for him, his hand closed on empty air. Moore was alone for 2 days, or what felt like 2 days. The trench felt different. The walls seemed closer. Every shadow had weight. On the morning the runners found him, he was sitting in the dugout with his rifle across his knees. Not sleeping, not eating, just waiting. To be taken like the others, or for someone to come and tell him it was over. They brought him to the rear, sat him in the grey room, brought in an inquisitor with a ledger and a pen. That was 3 hours ago. Vielle closed her ledger. "Thank you," she said. "You've been thorough." She stood, gathered her papers, prepared to file the record, to close the case, another tactical loss, another squad consumed by the veil. But something made her stop. She flipped back through her notes, to the very beginning, to the first minutes of the interview when the trauma had still been sharp and Moore had been barely coherent. She'd asked him about Dash. He'd said, kept his instruments clean, always had a calm word when the new lads were rattled. She found the same passage in her notes from an hour ago, when she'd asked him to describe the wardkeeper a second time, word for word. Not similar phrasing, not the reconstruction of a grieving man. Identical, a man in grief remembers, but the details shift. The story changes with every telling. This was rote, this was a script. She opened the secondary file. The rifle, found in no man's land at the location where Losh had vanished, hours after the soldier disappeared. March, Lower Antioch. The kind of cold that freezes a canteen solid. Moore had described it himself. Metal loses heat in minutes out there. A rifle set down in that mud reaches ground temperature in a quarter hour. The barrel had been warm, hours later, freezing mud. Still warm, unless it hadn't been sitting there for hours. Unless whatever was speaking through Moore's mouth had described the instant of taking it, the warmth still in the steel from Losh's living hands, because it couldn't tell the difference between then and now. Because time didn't work the same way for something that had come through the veil. Vielle looked up from her notes. Moore was already looking at her, not shaking, not sunken-eyed, not the broken thing that had come stumbling out of the forward positions 3 hours ago. Still, absolutely still, his breathing was barely visible, and looking back through the interview in her memory, she couldn't recall his eyes blinking. Not once, not in 3 hours. Just watching. The fixed attention of something wearing a soldier's face and learning how to talk. "You're very thorough, Inquisitor," Moore said. His voice was different, clear, without the hoarseness of a man who had been screaming into darkness. He wasn't speaking to her. He was observing her, the way a teacher observes a student, checking whether the lesson has been absorbed. Vielle's hand moved toward the bell that would call the guards. The door was locked. Standard security protocol. She had sealed herself inside with the prisoner. The wardstones beneath the floor hummed. They had been humming all along, a constant vibration she'd learned to ignore 20 years ago. But now the hum was different, coming from underneath. From somewhere very close to the surface. "The record is still running," Moore said. His mouth moved, but the voice came from somewhere deeper, somewhere patient. Somewhere that had been waiting a very long time and had found at last a way to speak. "You've been writing it down carefully, every word, every detail." He leaned forward. "Let me make sure you write this part correctly." The last thing Sarah Vielle saw was her own hands reaching for the pen. The last thing she heard was the wardstones stopping their hum. The last thing she understood was that the interrogation wasn't over. It was just beginning. They found Vielle's case notes 3 days later, complete, undamaged. Her chair was empty, the pen was still warm,